topic of the week time.
All right, yeah, let's get into the topic of the week. So, the topic of the week this week is what turns you off from playing, purchasing, or completing a video game? And I'll just start out by saying anything called Crackdown. It's kind of a huge turnoff for me. What about you?
Crackdown doesn't turn me off. There's some good times to be had in it. But for sure, a crappy game is definitely going to turn you off. That's kind of obvious, isn't it? So we've had some people on Facebook that were engaging with us and letting us know some of their like pet peeves and things that turn them right off from picking a game up.
Nadine from Facebook, she says, being bombarded with microtransaction shilling when purchases add nothing to the gameplay but bright colors to look at. What happened to just unlocking stuff by playing the game? So me personally, I don't really have too many problems with microtransactions and stuff like that. I usually just ignore almost all of that. The only time I really engage with that stuff is if I feel like it's a game that's worthy of more of my money. If it's a game I'd be spending a lot of time with, a lot of time playing. Because like I said, I think if you were to, completely strip out microtransactions from a lot of games, I feel like the price of the game would probably go up. I think this is just a way to sort of offset the cost of most video games, because you can have, your whales out there or people with a lot more money, and they can buy this stuff if they want it, and that will offset the cost of games being $60, which is games prices haven't really changed that much, relative to inflation, and as we've progressed for the last couple console generations. So I feel like that's just a way to keep costs down. I don't think that I've ever quit playing a game just because of microtransactions and stuff like that. Like I said, most of the time I usually just ignore it. But what are your feelings on it?
I don't think the microtransactions really offset. I feel like it's really on top of the game. Because I think if you look at something like Fortnite, which is free, it probably, if you break it down to how much is spent per person, it probably does come close or maybe over the like $60 mark. Like it could be way over the $60 mark. So people are spending like $100 per person on these games. I don't know. I don't have the numbers, but I just feel like you're buying the game for $60 in Canada. It's 80 basically. And then you have these like get to the end game quicker or get the advantage type of transactions, microtransactions,
Yeah, well,
and like it's on top. That's on top. It's almost like the season pass, but it's not included in it. I don't know. I don't buy that stuff, so I don't really care. But it is
yeah,
annoying
man.
to have that shit in there.
Yeah, I don't buy it either, but it depends. Like, I'm playing some Apex Legends right now, and that's a free to play game. So, I mean, the microtransactions have to exist for that game to exist.
Sure.
And but it's different in a $60 game. Like, whenever Battlefront 2 came out, and then they had all this extra bullshit on top of it. So it just depends. It's just a case by case situation. But what else turns you off from completing a game or playing it?
So for me, the number one, and I really thought about this, the number one reason why I usually put a game down is because I have too many choices. And when you have like 4 games and maybe 3 or 2 of them are in the wing waiting, and you're playing one of them that's just like dragging on or it's not capturing your attention, I just want to start that honeymoon phase over again where I'm starting a new game, learning it, and just getting that like new experience in me. So I have a hard time sticking with a game if I have too many games on the fly. It's almost like Netflix, where you're searching through Netflix for half an hour before you find something to actually watch. Like you spend so much time just perusing and adding things to your list, and you don't actually go to your list to play anything. You're just looking for something new again. And the Game Pass, I'd like to say the Game Pass does that. It doesn't, because I've played a lot of those games already. But the Game Pass kind of lends itself to that, where you could download a game and be like, nah, this game's crap after an hour, and then try something else, and then try another one.
That's definitely a contributing factor, is like how much you actually invested in it. If you bought a $60 game brand new, then you're probably going to be more inclined to play through the whole thing versus something you just got for free off Game Pass or whatever. Yeah.
And that's what we used to do when we were younger. Like you got a game and that was it. Because you couldn't get anything else.
Yeah, see, I usually won't start a game if I don't think I'm going to play through all of it or most of it. So I usually only stuff that I will stop and start like that will be like smaller games, like you're saying, is stuff that's like free on Game Pass where I don't have any real investment in it. But if it's like a big AAA game, like I've been trying to get to Metal Gear Solid 5 for like years now, but I just can't ever get to it because I'm like, I know if I start that game, I have to set aside a couple months, and so there just keeps being other games that come out that get in the way, and so it's just like one of those things where I don't want to start it unless I can really invest the time into it. So yeah, sometimes I just yeah, like I won't play games unless I know that I can really get through the whole thing.
Hmm.
Another thing I was going to talk about is a thing that used to turn me off from games and make me not want to play them when I was younger was just games being too difficult,
Mm.
games being too hard, stuff like that. It doesn't really factor in as much now. I mean, I typically don't play a ton of hard games now just because I don't have time to like grind or die over and over again. But when I was young, I would, if a game was pushing back against me too much, because I didn't really take games seriously in my younger years. So a game being difficult would certainly push me away. What about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm a little more lenient. Like I'll take the punishment a bit and I'll try it. If it's really abusive, I'll definitely walk away from it. But that was something a good friend of mine, Aaron Randall, said on Facebook as well. He said that if it's aggressively difficult, and he used the example of Mario Galaxy 2. He said like he wants a challenge, but he doesn't want to do the same level 50 times over and over, and it just keep dying, and it's just super repetitive and boring because obviously you're not able to rise to the challenge and do whatever it is the game's trying to get you to do. So it's frustrating. Like the frustration, definitely that'll turn you off for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Like he said, at least give me a chance to say right before the part that I'm going to die at. I had that. I guess the most recent example of this for me, a game that kind of turned me off and made me want to stop playing it. And I actually never went back and beat it. Was Bloodborne.
Mm.
I'm not really into those kind of games like the Dark Soulsy stuff, but I wanted to play one and give it an honest go. And so I bought that game, and I was enjoying it for the most part. But one mechanic in that was they had these blood vials that you used to, get your health back. And so you would go to a boss fight, and if you died a few times, you would, be using your blood vials in the middle of the boss fight, and eventually you would run out of them. And so if you wanted more, you would have to go back and grind and kill enemies in hopes that they would drop them. And then on top of that, you would, if you died, you still had to run back to the boss. So if you weren't very
Mm.
good at the game, like me, because I'm not very good at those sort of third person character action games like that, like the Devil May Cries or the Dark Souls or that kind of thing. If you're not very good at those, then the game really punishes you for not being able to get through a boss encounter on the first few runs, and then making you go back and grind and run to the boss, and sometimes you get hit by some enemies on the way to the boss. And so that was just a thing that kind of pushed me away from that game and made me not want to play it, because I'm like, well, I just want to keep going head on into the boss here until I beat him. I don't want to have to go back and grind and like run to the boss every time. I feel like I could have beat him faster if I could have just, had the opportunity to start right there and just fight him and have all my blood vials that I had before I started the boss fight the first time.
Yeah, well, thank God for save points and checkpoints and stuff in games, because in like the retro games, when you had to start the whole level over, and it was hard to even get to where you got to before you died, like
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So to kind of add more to that too is the last game I played that I haven't touched since I put it down is Divinity Original Sin 2. So that game's like a strategy RPG where you move around and you have so many move spaces and stuff. So it's another like XCOM type RPG game. It's great and it's fun and there's so much depth to it. But I put 64 hours into it, and on the 65th hour, when I'm just about to get like finish the game basically in the last act, the game just became super hard. And the game's hard to begin with. Like it's fair, but it's difficult. But once I got to that point, it was like, holy fuck. Like what happened? It was like it cranked up the difficulty like 3 levels, and I was already playing on normal as it is. And it was just so hard that I haven't been able to beat it, and I want to beat it because I like completing things, but it's just I don't know, like that's horrible design to just all of a sudden make it so difficult. And it's not like you can grind in that game either to level up more because there's only a finite amount of enemies and items and stuff like that. So when you get to that point, you're screwed. You have to get into those fights and figure out how to actually beat it. And it's either
Yeah,
I'm too stupid to figure out the tactics for this thing after 64 hours. I thought I had the game under wraps, but it turned me right off. I just don't have the energy after that amount of time.
yeah, that brought to mind another example of this that I hadn't even thought of until just now. But I played Final Fantasy 15 a couple years ago, and I think it was maybe even last year. But I got all the way through that. I played like maybe 80 something hours of that game. I don't even remember. And I got to the end, and it was one of those things where, because if I'm playing a JRPG or something like that, like I want to grind a lot before I hit the end game, before I go to the last boss and all that. And they just throw you into this super difficult area where the enemies were just like kicking the shit out of me, and like I couldn't just go back out of that and grind. And so I ended up just bailing on the game right at the end after putting all this time into it, just like you said
Mm,
on Divinity, because I was just like, well, you're forcing me down this little path here and you're not letting me grind if I want to. And so I'm like, well, I guess I'm out of this game now.
that sucks because I really liked Final Fantasy 15.
I like some things about it, but overall it was kind of disappointing.
I can understand that. I had the Royal Edition, so I had like the all the DLC and the alternate ending thing, and I just played the game not realizing I actually picked the shit ending that everyone complained about, and I just beat the game, and I'm like, oh well, whatever. Like I'm not going back to see it, but I only put like 65 hours into it to beat it, so like I get it. I didn't do all the dungeons and stuff, but yeah, there were parts where you just got whooped. You got whooped pretty good. And
Yeah.
it kind of brings up another point. Like when games are too long and you're burnt out from it, obviously you're going to put it down. And it's unfortunate because you've invested so many hours in this game to get to that point and you didn't see the ending. So like
Yeah.
Divinity's one for me, Final Fantasy's one for you. So if you're putting like 50, 60, 70 hours into it, that's a long time. And if you haven't beaten it yet, that sucks because it's like Witcher 3 too. Like there's so much to do. And it gets to the point where you either have to just get back to the story instead of dicking around on the outside or just burn through it. Like not even watch what people say, not even listen to the dialogue, just burn through it and get it over and done with at some point because you put like 200 hours into it. Like Fallout or Skyrim. Like it
Yeah, well,
just
those are examples I was going to make, just because like every time I get a new Bethesda game like a Skyrim or something like that, a Fallout, like I'm loving it, loving it, loving it, and then I get over to like over 100 hours, and then I just reach a point at like it's usually around, and this sounds pretty insane, but usually around the 150-hour mark in one of those games
jeez.
where I just completely lose all. I'm just like, all right, it's time to get to the end game and beat this. Like it's just like an immediate drop off in fun for me, where it's like I've already spent a ton of time in this world in this game. It's time for it to be over. So I end up blazing through the end of like Fallout 4 or something like that because I'm like, I just need to be done with this. And like, yeah, when you put too much time into it, you want to see it to the end, but also you can burn yourself out if you don't manage that. Like Ubisoft games are notorious for this.
Yeah.
Where like I love the shit out of Ghost Recon Wildlands, and me and my friend played it on and off for like a year, and that game has so much fucking content in it that like I think we only ended up maybe beating like a third of that game, and that was spending over 100 hours in it. And I mean, I like these big games with all this content, but after you play like a bunch of them back to back, you can get burned out on it. So, do you have any other examples of that?
I definitely Ubisoft is a huge perpetrator of all the side mission collectible whatever stuff. Like that stuff is fine if it has a point or purpose. Like if you collect 10 feathers in Assassin's Creed, it gives you something. You know what I mean? But a lot of the time it's just there and it doesn't really do anything. Crackdown has that same thing where you're collecting all these orbs to increase your agility and stuff like that. And there's hidden orbs and there's like 250 hidden orbs alone just for the hidden orbs. And it's like, why would you do all of that? Why would you get them all? Because there's an
Yeah,
achievement for it. Like, you don't actually need it. It's just it's filler. It's a way to get people to keep playing your game, for like the people who have OCD and need to collect absolutely everything. And that overwhelmingness stuff, it's a distraction, and it makes me not want to beat the game like we're talking about, because I have a tendency to not follow the story for a long time. I just go and do other stuff. I go look around. I go turn rocks over. I level up a bit. I do the side missions. And eventually you get burnt out, like we're saying. Like, it's too much, when you probably should just stick to the main story and enjoy the game as a whole. And I actually did that with Red Dead. I didn't do everything on the outside of it. And
yeah, I
I
was
know
going to mention that too.
yeah, I know you did a ton. You've played way more hours of that game than I have. And like, yes, you can fall into that game and just become like a cowboy, basically, just be fully immersed. There's so much to do. The world feels alive, but it's just,
Yeah,
I got stuff
I
to do.
Yeah, I didn't, because I 100%ed Red Dead 1. And so when I got the second game, I was like, I'm going to 100% this. And then when I got in there and saw everything you needed to do, because I 100%ed the first game in like 5 days, which
Five
is a
days.
reasonable, yeah, I did. I mean, I didn't get all the achievements because a lot of them were tied to the multiplayer stuff. But as far as the single player stuff, I beat everything in that game in like 5 days. Granted, I didn't have a job at the time, so I had a lot more free time on my hands. But yeah, with the Red Dead 2, once I saw the amount of stuff you had to do to 100% that game, I was like, no, thank you. And so I didn't even see all of the content in that. There's so much stuff in that game, and I put like over 200 hours in the single player alone. So, and I didn't even see anything. So that's a huge ask. And maybe I'll come back to it at some point. But yeah, Red Dead is definitely a recent example of a game that had just maybe a little bit too much content.
And it's sad because they put so much care into it. You know what I mean? Like, there's just,
Yeah.
it's an experience, and it's almost like if you played it again, you would see completely different stuff, which you would. And when you've posted stuff and other posts that have been put up by our friends, like, I didn't see that. I didn't even come across that. Like, things happen at different times of the day, and like, even the randomness of things that could happen while you're on the same mission, like, it's just, there's a lot there, and it's too much. It's just too
Yeah,
much.
the amount of stuff that I keep seeing that people are finding in that game is absurd. Um, but Joseph Manion from Facebook, he says, bad gameplay, unentertaining story, and not enough carrots is something that will turn him off
Carrot,
from
yeah,
playing a game.
I get carrots. I get that.
Yeah, do you put them on your pizza? Do you like them on a
Um,
pizza?
no, I might blend it into the sauce though.
Okay, but for me, yeah, bad gameplay is actually not that big of a turnoff. Like, I'm weird when it comes to like video games. Like, I'm oddly satisfied with whatever you give me for the most part, as long as it works. Like, I can play most games and find some fun in it. I just inherently like what a video game is, and I mean, the gameplay would have to be pretty bad. Like, Crackdown 3, when we were playing that last night, is a pretty good example of like everything about that game, gameplay wise, is pretty bad. And but I would still engage with it. So it's not, that's like kind of far down on my list of things that turn me off from playing a game. I guess it's all dependent on what type of genre you're talking about. If you're talking about a platformer and the mechanics are super bad and you can't make jumps and be all precise, and yeah. But like, if it's like a shooter and it's not the best like shooting mechanics, I'm still satisfied with just the fact that I can shoot people. And so it's all dependent on the on the game or the genre. What do you think about bad gameplay?
I agree with you. Like, there's different calibers of bad games. There's games that are mechanically shit, and they're frustrating and are just slapped together. They're like bargain bin titles. But there's also games that are like, they're still kind of crap, but there's funny things that can happen from it. It's entertaining. Like, there's glitches, and it, like, the coding is bad, or the textures are popping, or things are falling through the levels and stuff. So like you see that a lot of that stuff with AAA games like Ubisoft and all the Assassin's Creed games. Like there's a lot of hilarious glitches and stupid things that happen that are hilarious.
Yeah, I mean,
And
sometimes a bad game is like the fun. Like I
yeah,
said
that's
with
it.
Crackdown, it's kind of fun, and it's fun when things break. Yeah, I know
it
what you're saying.
in Crackdown's defense, we played multiplayer together, and I have about like 7 hours of single player. Multiplayer is busted because the lag is outrageous, and I don't know if it's like bad network code or whatever. But when you play single player, like it's the game's fine. But in our multiplayer game, like it was busted to shit. Like the physics were crazy, and it might be like there's just too much going on. Like there's too many
Yeah, well,
explosions and things flying around. It can't handle it. Whereas like
yeah, well,
if
open world games tend to have that problem
sure,
online because it's taken into account all these like cars driving
yeah,
and pedestrians and explosions. Yeah,
sure, okay, so like Red Dead kind of has that, but the game's slower. And GTA Online had that to an extent, but it's not as bad as what Crackdown was last night. Like Crackdown's
yeah,
pretty bad. Like where it slowed down and shit. We'll talk about that after, but like yeah, I don't know. There's fun to be had in Crackdown, but it is like a poorly made game a bit. And I'm sure there's lots of other examples of that where it's like a guilty pleasure. Like you play this game because it's just so funny and ridiculous. The thing I'm thinking about right now is like Gang Beasts. Like I that's a weird example because the game, what it is for people who don't know what it is, it's like a 4-player brawler, and basically your character is this like silly putty type character, and you're grabbing other people and trying to throw them off the level. And the levels have like different elements to them. So some have like grinders, and you throw people in the grinder, and some of them are on top of a skyscraper, and you throw them through the railings off the building and stuff. But the controls are fucked. Like they're
yeah.
purposely
There's a
fucked.
few. Yeah, there's a few games like that where the purpose actually is to have bad controls,
Yeah,
like that game, and then I've never played it, but I've watched people play it. Octodad, have you ever seen that?
yeah. Like Manuel
Where the
Samuel's another one. Yeah, I know what
Yeah,
you're talking about.
but that's more leaning into the comedy aspect of it. It's like intentionally bad for the
Sure,
sake of
sure, but
having that. It's a mechanic.
it speaks to what we're talking about. People like that clunky, shitty gameplay because it leads to comedy. So
Yeah,
it's weird that there's a genre for that.
yeah, and people play all those early access games where they're not finished and they're broken. So I mean, there's a certain level of charm to that. I mean, you know, people love PUBG, even though it was kind of a janky mess and still is.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, people don't. I feel like a majority of people will kind of look over that sometimes for certain games. But he said he was talking about unentertaining story.
Hmm.
For me, I don't. The story is almost the least important thing. Now, if I'm, playing a Telltale game or something like that, which rest in peace. Obviously the story is the point. But for any other game, I mean, the stories are generally bad in most video games anyway. And if it's a big, huge open world game and I'm running off doing other things, I lose the plot anyway. I just don't really, I don't really care. I mean, certainly a good story elevates a game, but it's not, it's not a factor that deters me from playing a game. Usually, what about you?
I do play a lot of games for the story. That's why I like RPGs. I have been turned off by story. It's not so much the story; it's just shit writing and uninteresting characters. Like if I can't get invested with at least one character, I don't really want to play the game. And like if the gameplay's there, I might power through it. But even if the gameplay was there and it's just so boring and I don't care what happens next, I probably will shut it off.
Yeah, and so then the last point he made was the digital carrot on the stick, as it were, in a game. For me, for me, that doesn't factor in too much. I mean, I do look at things like Apex Legends right now, and sure, you're leveling up and you're getting the currency, to buy stuff in the store, but it's just other skins for guns and stuff like that. It's not really a nice carrot on the stick for me personally, just to have different emotes and my gun's green now or whatever it is, different poses for your character and stuff like that. That's not enough of a carrot on the stick for me. So even though I like playing Apex Legends for the gameplay and the experience of it, I don't like their sort of carrots on a stick, as it were. And maybe I would want to play more if I felt like I was kind of investing into it more, because you're not leveling up any characters per se. The characters are the characters. But yeah, I probably have bounced off some games where, maybe if there was a carrot on the stick in there, I would, like even Destiny 1 was kind of a thing where like I was always chasing something. And once I started playing that game more casually in Destiny 2, where I wasn't like trying to keep up with the dailies and grinding for everything all the time, and I didn't really go for that carrot on the stick, I found that I did stop playing or start playing less of it. So it can factor in. How much does that factor in for you?
It depends on what type of game it is. Like the carrot could literally be anything. It could be the story. It could be the gameplay. It could be unlockables. It could be something to get that you can brag about and show off. I don't know. It could be a lot of things. It just depends. To me, it doesn't really matter. Like if the game is there, I'm fine with it. It doesn't matter what's going to happen next. But for sure, like carrots, it's funny that we're talking about like this thing as like a carrot. It's probably had some other name, but like say like in Diablo 3 or any action RPG, like the carrot is opening that next chest, killing that elite boss to see what he drops. That's the carrot. The carrot is getting the next weapon that'll make you a little bit stronger. And that's addictive. So that carrot could actually be a smart thing for developers to keep throwing into their games, because it grabs that addictive behavior that humans have for
Yeah, well,
things.
it's certainly ruined Magnum's life with Destiny. That's for sure.
Speaking of Magnum, he actually wrote in and said that the most important thing for him buying a game is whether or not he can play with friends. And I don't 100% agree. Like I don't mind single player games, but for sure I would buy a game if everyone else was buying it and I had no interest in it.
Yeah, like when I bought Fallout 76 and then none of you guys played with me.
I
It's kind of
played
like
it.
that.
I played it for like a couple hours and it was garbage. Come on.
We're going to have to go back to that because I bought the fucking collector's edition, all that
Oh
shit, and
my
all I got was a
God.
fucking helmet.
You should have sold it
But
immediately.
yeah. Yeah, but it's so cool. I don't want to give it away. But yeah, I mean, I definitely buy games to play with friends for sure. But that's yeah, just like tangentially related. Yeah, if like my friends stop playing a game, then I'll walk away from it too. If I didn't have friends to play Red Dead Online with, I wouldn't play it. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, friends do factor into what I'm playing and how long I play a game.
Yeah, the social aspect is huge. Like the amount of time that we've spent screwing around in Red Dead, I wouldn't do that alone. And I wouldn't be doing that with strangers. I'm doing it
Yeah,
because we're all having a good time, laughing, carrying on. It's just like like the boys are in town and we're going to screw around and shoot up the place, and it's just, no, for sure.
yeah,
I know what he's saying and I agree.
yeah. Another recent example for me and you was when we tried to play that Ashen game,
Oh yeah.
and it had like the just really dumb co-op. Like it was just confusing and convoluted how you played co-op with your friends, or how you would like circumvent the way that the developers intended for you to play, which is
Yeah.
just to have random strangers come into your game throughout while you're playing more single player style. But it's like, if you're going to have co-op in the game, then go all in on it. Like, why do we have to put in a code and then try and be in the same area in both our separate games, and then maybe you'll see your friend? Like, and then we just like said, fuck this shit, and bounced off it immediately. It's like, well, I can't play this with my friend. I'm not going to waste more time like figuring out how we can get this to work. I'm out.
Yeah. And we played it for like an hour and a half trying to figure out why we couldn't see each other. And it was because we weren't on the same mission. And it's just
Yep.
like, why? Like, that's not true co op. Like okay, yeah, you get to play together, but now there's stipulations. It's you have to have the same code entered in, and you have to be in the same part of the game to see each other. So you just kind of appear in your friend's game. And like, why can't you just let me invite the person into the game? Like, why? It's just, oh my God, it was just so stupid. It was so stupid.
Yeah, there's some rare examples of this, occasions where, yeah, I mean, if you make it overly difficult for me to play your game with my friends, us to get into a game, and just get going. I mean, unless it's something like I'm super invested in, like Red Dead Online or something like that, where I'll probably put up with some bullshit because I really want to play that game. Yeah, if you don't make it easy for me to play with my friends, like in like a Battlefield has gone back and forth on this for years, like getting into a squad with your teammates, and like sometimes you join your friend's game and it puts you on the other team, and like you have to wait until the round's over to get on your team, and then it's sometimes you still have to jump through hoops to get all your people into a squad. They've made it better over time, but that was always a thing that annoyed me about the Battlefield games. Was like, just let me and my friends get in a squad and play. Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So um, back in the day, we'd all play Twisted Metal 2 PC together, and we had to use like a third party piece of software to get us all together to play this game. And the game, I don't know what it was. I don't know the specifics of the behind the scenes network code and stuff. But basically, when everyone was trying to join the game, we had to have a join order so that everyone could get in. So if you had everyone joining at the same time, it wouldn't work. If you had, like, if you joined the game first and I couldn't get in, it's because you were blocking me from getting in. So I had to go in before you, and then you can come in. So it turned into this like logic problem where we had to figure out who came at what point in time, and had to wait a second, and this person came, then it's this person, then it's that person, in order to get everyone into the lobby. And it's just it's weird because it's such a hassle, and it took like 5 or 10 minutes to figure this out, maybe even more sometimes, but we loved the game so much, and we were all pretty good friends, and it was a social thing, so we all put up with that crap. But other people wouldn't. Like a newcomer would come in and be like, what is this nonsense? Like, why can't I
Yeah,
just start and play?
I never got involved in the whole Twisted Metal 2 PC thing. So I never experienced that. But I was going to bring up another example that we both shared. I don't know if you thought about this, but I think the game we bounced off the hardest ever, maybe ever, was Twisted Metal PS3.
Yes.
And like all of our friends, that's probably one of the most anticipated games of my entire life. Like the lead up to that game, the hype we all had for it
Yeah.
after Twisted Metal Black, and I bounced off that game so fast and so hard. Like everything about the single player turned me off. I didn't like the design of it. I didn't like the weird boss fights. I didn't like. I thought it was maybe a little bit too difficult. But it was just everything about it turned me off, and then the fact that the multiplayer was just broken as shit. Like like, just like I was saying in Battlefield a while ago, like getting all your friends on one team and putting together the teams and squads that you want to play together in that game seemed impossible. All kinds of network errors, and then basically almost right after they released that game, the studio was like, well, we're kind of done here. We're not really going to be updating this. So it's just like, well, I guess we're all done then. And there were some people that held on, some people that just wanted to play a Twisted Metal so desperately they kept playing it. But that's probably one of the most disappointing experiences of my entire life. And I've never bounced off a game harder than that.
It was very disappointing. I lasted 2 weeks. So did Rhodey. Rhodey and I hung out a few days after we quit, basically, and we both went to GameStop and traded the game in that day. We were like, just take this off of our hands. Like
Yeah.
I've never traded a game so fast, like gotten rid of it, because I didn't even think I could like sell it to someone on like Craigslist or Kijiji or whatever and get money for it. I was like, just get rid of this piece of shit, because they reinvented the game. They tried to make it all team based. And it's like they were saying, oh, we listened to the player base and we're making the game they want. And it was just like, no, you didn't. You completely redid the whole thing. And the core of the game, which is multiplayer, was garbage. You didn't have the servers to support it or the network code or whatever. It was just day one, you shot yourselves in the foot. Day one, it was shit. The ship was sinking. It was fucked. And you guys screwed up, and you've ruined the franchise basically with that. And it's funny that you
Yeah.
brought that up, because I didn't think of that, but you're right. We did bounce off that really fast.
Yeah. And my final example I wanted to bring up was it's kind of related to mechanics in games, but the Forza racing games. I try to play them, but my biggest issue with those games is a lack of a fast travel, or it being a hidden, like later on in the game, like in that game specifically, like you have to pay in-game currency to fast travel, and I'm like, why? It doesn't make sense. And you have to like play further into the game before you even unlock the ability to do it. And then even then, they don't make it easy enough. Like I love open world games, but an open world racing game just doesn't really appeal to me. So I don't want to have to drive back and forth to each event. I just want to get in the races and go. And so while I have other issues with Forza, that's my biggest hang up with it, and why I bounce off of it every time, because like just let me get to the races and race. Like I don't want to drive around smashing through the billboards and dodging traffic and all that. It's just a time waster. And so that's my final example of something that just like make me bounce off a game. Like but a counterpoint to that is like, in Red Dead, like fast traveling wasn't really easy in that game either. Like you had to go back and forth, but in that game, I liked that. I didn't really engage with the fast traveling too much. I would rather just to get on my horse and go across the landscape and hunt on the way and stuff like that. So it's all dependent on the game, but yeah, the fast travel thing in the Forza series, it just completely turns me off.
Yeah, I get that. I actually really like the Forza games. I think they're some of the best racing games out there. It is weird to have an open world racing game. I think they did a good job melding the two together, but it's not necessary. Um, I do agree with you though, because I played it quite a bit and I did get the fast travel for Forza 4. I'm talking about. I did get the fast travel, and the price comes down after you smash so many billboards. Like it gets cheaper and cheaper. I don't like that system. I do think it's stupid that you have to pay to fast travel to an event or drive to it. Like there's enough events around that you're close enough. It only takes like 30 seconds. But if you wanted to go from like a different style of race where you're doing like off-roading and then you wanted to go do street races, those are on opposite ends of the map. So it's going to take you like 5 or 10 minutes to drive to the other side to get it. And it's, what's the point? Like sure, you can drive there and you'll do a couple of like mini things, like going through speed traps and earning some reputation or whatever it was called in the game, or going through and doing like a drifting challenge real quick on your way there. Sure, that stuff's there, but it's not necessary. So I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's kind of stupid. You should just be able to fast travel to wherever you want to go. So I have one more example here, and this would have been more true a couple years ago, and you probably more so maybe like a decade ago. But sometimes I don't play a game if there's crappy achievements or trophies. I've become like, I think most people have become addicted to unlocking things and getting a badge to show that they've done something in a game. And that is rewarding in itself. But I've definitely either burned through games or put a game down or just been burnt out from certain achievements in games because they're either crazy and so grindy, or they're so hard to get, or it's just unattainable. Like you have to have 100 hours in a game to get like 10 gamer score or like a bronze trophy or something. Like it's not worth it. So
Yeah,
I have
well,
been turned off in the past from that sort of thing.
yeah, well, you know my history with that. I mean, I have a pretty high gamer score. It's because I was an achievement whore at one point in my life, and I used to spend way too much time caring about that stuff and grinding and playing games I didn't even want to play normally for achievements. And I spent way too much time just trying, like you said, trying to spend all these dozens of hours just trying to get 10 gamer score. But I left that life long behind me. I don't even really care about achievements that much anymore. I'll care about them a little bit if it's like a game I really care about, but yeah, I just can't be bothered. There's too many games to play. So these games are already long enough. I just don't. Yeah, I don't do that anymore. So I don't know that the achievements ever really turned me off though from playing a game. I mean, I do my weird OCD tick where if a game doesn't have achievements that keep your gamer score divisible by fives, that messes with me. Like when we played Ashen, and the first achievement I unlock is like for 7 or 17. I'm like, no, it needs to be 5, 10, or 15. Like, what are you doing? So that'll turn me off from playing a game. If you got these weird odd numbers that are going to fuck up my perfect gamer score, then I'm not going to play it.
I don't get why they do that too. Like why?
Yeah, it makes
Why
no
would you
sense.
do that? Why would you give me one?
Yeah, like I still need to go back to Ashen so I can unlock one more achievement to even out that number. It's eating away at me.
I thought you left life behind.
Well, I mean, I'm just every time I log in, I see that number, and it's not divisible by 5, and it bothers me.
Don't relapse. Don't relapse, buddy. I'm gonna have to put you in there.
I'm gonna have to calm down.